Listen, the most moral army in the world, okay, when the most moral army in the world is raising Gaza in an act of unjustifiable violence, okay, raising Gaza, killing tens of thousands of children and women and elderly and men, civilians, destroying any matter of like civil infrastructure, killing their own hostages, waving white flags directly with gunfire, killing hostages with rocket fire for the crime of being in the vicinity of Palestinians that they want to kill. It's just they were always doing it in a moral way. Okay? You don't understand, guys. You don't understand. When Israel was killing hostages, pretty much every single one of them that hasn't been released at this fucking point, okay? And killing their own soldiers and killing anyone and everyone, really. It's a kill zone. They were doing it in a moral way. They were doing it in a moral way, and you guys don't understand it. Okay? It takes a high IQ to understand how moral the Israeli army is. Okay? You just don't get it.
Who are fighting a just war that is unparalleled in morality.
Israeli civilians in their hundreds were killed and kidnapped in the Hamas attacks of October the 7th. As part of his investigation, Karim Khan visited the sites of the massacres late last year. Today, he's seeking arrest warrants for Hamas's Gaza chief, Yahya Sinwar, the head of its military wing, Mohammed Deif, and its Qatar-based political leader.
I've seen a lot of discourse saying that the ICJ both sides the ruling. I know Hamas said it would welcome and cooperate with the arrest, but don't you think that more Israeli government officials should be held accountable? Smotrich, Ben-Gvir evade culpability? Yes. I think that in a fully, I mean, I've said this before, in a fully just and even approach to this conflict, yes, a shit ton more Israeli leaders, Israeli soldiers, Israeli generals would be prosecuted. And yes, there certainly would be Al-Qassam brigade commanders and Hamas militants in general and Hamas leadership in general, Islamic Jihad leadership in general, that would also be investigated and prosecuted for the war crimes that they committed. Because the reality is that, yes, October 7 was filled to the fucking brim with war crimes. Like, that's crazy. The idea that no war crimes occurred on October 7 is ridiculous, okay? It is not something that I believe. It is something that I have openly said time and time again. Now, of course, that is very different from the inception of why this kind of violence occurs, which is if we are being even-headed and being honest and reasonable, you would arrive at the same conclusion that I have arrived at on October 8th, which is that the occupying entity sets the standard of violence, and therefore 75 years of oppression, 75 years of struggle against that oppression is, of course, always going to inevitably yield very violent retaliation. Now, here's the thing. The ICC going after Israeli leadership is unimaginable. I cannot think of a single fucking instance in the history of the ICC or the ICJ as well, but certainly in the ICC, where someone who is an active collaborator with the American government, that is getting political cover from the American government, that has ever been prosecuted like this, that has ever had even an application for their arrest warrants, ever. Sure, maybe there might be like a person who did collaborate with the Americans at a certain point that we no longer have use for, that might have an arrest warrant later down the line, but not actively while they are currently engaging in the acts, the violent acts, and certainly not while America is offering open political cover for said acts. This is a massive moment, a unimaginably huge change of attitude, an unimaginably huge change of global politics, in my opinion. It spells that the American hegemony is in its final stage. Okay? Before Putin, it was literally only 47 Africans they prosecuted. Like, this is massively important, in my opinion. Massively important. And not because, like, I think that Benjamin Netanyahu is going to go to jail or anything. I don't think that, like, Interpol is going to arrest him. They're going to intercept his travel and arrest him alongside, like, Yoav Gallant and you know, prosecute him and he's going to go to jail or some shit. I don't believe that at all. I do not personally believe that that is going to happen. I do, however, think that, like I said, the not to be too much of an optics guy, but I do believe that the optics of this situation spells trouble for the American State Department. Like, they have to see the writing on the wall. It will also massively impact Israel's ability to conduct diplomacy if the arrest warrants are issued, as they won't be able to travel to Rome Statute signatory nations. The U.S. isn't a signatory. However, if they are voted out, the next Israeli leadership won't likely be affected. Yeah. This is something that I brought up. This is something that I brought up literally like on October 10, okay? It goes back to Zionist arrogance. It goes back to Zionist entitlement. And it goes back to all of the violence that is happening as a consequence of those opinions, as a consequence of that mentality, that fascist mentality running rampant through every aspect of Israeli governance. Okay? This has created, and this is not just me saying this, okay? I'm some random dickhead Twitch streamer. Make no mistake. There are people in the American State Department whose only interest is not like saving Palestinian lives by any means. Like, they don't give a shit about that at all. But whose only interest is the continuation of American empire, who also saw this reality. That if they continue without any restraint whatsoever, giving the go-ahead to Israel, that this would actually shake the standing and the confidence that the international community has in America's control, America's global dominance and America's control. That's what's happening here. Okay? What you are watching right now, what is unfolding in front of our eyes, is a very serious change in attitude and in enforcement. Think about that. Israeli Foreign Minister Katz asked AIPAC leaders to work with Congress against the ICC decision. Huh. See? Open foreign interference in American domestic affairs, American foreign policy. Bibi and Golan are the only targets because, one, people like the Chief of Staff Herzi Halevi and Shin Bet head Ronan Bar have already announced their retirement. Two, Ben-Gvir and Smotrich are not in the war cabinet, only on the National Security Cabinet, which influences the war less directly. And three, Gantz, who is in the war cabinet, it just isn't as inflammatory and is considered an alternative. It's America's guy, by the way. That's the other thing. Benny Gantz, who is a war criminal as well for prior incursions and prior sieges, war crimes that he actually flexed when he was running against Benjamin Netanyahu, mind you, is America's guy in the room. They want Benny Gantz to be the new liberal Zionist that will lead the apartheid and will manufacture consent and basically massage the narrative so that it's easier for all of our mainstream outlets to continue running the same exact propaganda for Israel. Benny Gantz is also announcing that he'll leave the government if a no day after plan passes till June 8th. It's all political, but that's it. Yes. Does Invade the Hague Act apply to Israel too? What is this? Stream on X? Perhaps there's some video game streams in there. I'm going to say, yes. The pussy in bio website. It's not a parody account. This is actually his account. Let's continue.
Ismail Haniyeh.
There are reasonable grounds to believe that these three Hamas leaders are criminally responsible for the killing of Israeli civilians in attacks perpetrated by Hamas and other armed groups on the 7th.
Can I just say once again, bald men reign supreme. Bald men on top again. I hate to be that guy. But honestly, bald men strike, and they strike pretty fucking hard, okay?
7th of October, 2023.
Look at how serious they are, by the way. This goes kind of hard. I have to admit. This goes kind of hard. They're like, very disappointed in the way that Israel has conducted itself. Very disappointing. Should have quote tweeted this. What happens on Twitch? Nah, I don't want it. Bald's not bothered by the tribulations of hairstyles. Giga Haas, more brain power. True.
The taking of hostages and the other crimes alleged in our applications.
Those other crimes, he said, included horrendous sexual violence, including rape. Hamas denounced the decision, saying the prosecutor was equating the victim with the executioner. When Vladimir Putin was hit with an ICC arrest warrant over Ukraine, it immediately meant travel to any signatory to the Rome Statute. China, not one of them, risked possible arrest. For now, no such risk for Benjamin Netanyahu, at least not until a panel of judges rules on the prosecutor's request. Britain, an ICC member, has called the move unhelpful. President Biden has labelled it outrageous. Legal experts say a decision on the warrants could come within weeks.
Well, I'm joined now by the barrister Toby Cadman, who specialises in international criminal and human rights law. There's an argument over whether the ICC has jurisdiction here. The Americans, Israelis and Britain are saying they don't. How does it have jurisdiction when Israel isn't a signatory and Palestine isn't a state?
Well, first of all, one of the things that we've heard today is there was the report by the panel of experts, and one of the things that they've looked at very carefully is the question of jurisdiction. Very clearly declares that Palestine is a state for the purpose of the Rome Statute of the International Criminal Court, and has stated that the attacks in Gaza, which Karim Khan has referred to as a complete siege of Gaza, is part of an international armed conflict, and the attacks by Hamas in Israel.
Oh shit!
Prosecutor.
CNN interviewed him. Oh my God, Christian Amanpour, what is happening right now?
Are part of a non.
There are decades where nothing happens, and then there are weeks where decades happen.
International armed conflict. But if we look at,
I hope I'm not like hyping this up too much. Okay. Among 124 countries, Germany is a signatory to the Rome Statute. Would they arrest Bibi? Are they obliged to? Well, that would be awesome. What makes it even funnier is that the bald guy was Israel's choice to be the lead, to be the head prosecutor. America also petitioned for him to be the head prosecutor.
So they can say that even though Palestine isn't an internationally recognized state, for the purposes of the court, it is. That's going to sound odd to people.
Well, no. I mean, effectively, what they're saying is they're confirming that Palestine is a state. Now, if we go back to 2015, when Palestine ratified the Rome Statute, and then 2018, when it...
I think you're hyping this up too much, unfortunately. Guys, I don't think that Benjamin Netanyahu is going to get fucking arrested, okay? Calm down. I've never said that I personally believe that Benjamin Netanyahu is going to get fucking packed up, or Yoav Gallant. I'm simply stating that this is a change of pace, at least for the time being, a major change of pace from the way that international organs of justice have operated as an arm of American imperialism. The fact that they are even petitioning to start the arrest warrant process, the fact that they're even applying for it is unironically a major shift. You have to remember, it's about pressure on all fronts. Okay? You can literally look at each individual. You can look at each individual protest and go, oh, well, this doesn't seem to be that big. That doesn't seem, what are the college protests doing? What are the people like blocking the roads doing? And it's like, they all play a formative role. They play a significant role in creating new vectors of pressure. Okay? It builds momentum. It galvanizes the protesters. It reminds people that, what they're doing is correct. It gives people the moral courage to go out and demonstrate. And all of those demonstrations basically lead into a buildup. No, this is a reflection of our society currently. It's for the galleries. The reason why, when the ICC put out an arrest warrant for Vladimir Putin due to war crimes in Bucha specifically, and also his unjustifiable invasion of Ukraine, the reason why we did not, I didn't think of it as anything super significant, was because he is already outside of the sphere of influence of America. He is already a foreign adversary. Okay? That was a correct decision from the ICC, mind you. But that doesn't really matter. That is inconsequential, because that is just the court operating alongside American interests. This is perhaps one of the first instances where the court is operating against American interests. It's huge. That's why I always say sanctions often don't work against foreign adversaries, but do work against our allies, because our allies do not suspect it. They do not craft their entire economy and the entire mode of existence around potentially getting sanctioned by the United States of America in the way that countries outside of the sphere of influence of the United States and the Western world do.
referred itself to the International Criminal Court, the prosecutor at that time took the rather extraordinary step of asking a panel of the pretrial judges to determine whether the Office of the Prosecutor had jurisdiction over what happened in Palestine. And the panel of judges clearly said that it does.
So does this mean that if an arrest warrant is granted, any country that is a signatory to the ICC would have an obligation to arrest Netanyahu if he steps foot in their country?
Absolutely, yes. It's very clearly what it means.
So this could massively restrict his ability to act as an international leader?
It could and it should, yes.
And, I mean, why wouldn't that arrest warrant be granted? You know, what would be the argument against it, given the prosecutor has applied, saying there's a case to answer?
I mean, it's certainly not going to be a question of jurisdiction, because that question has clearly been answered. And just to be clear, is that the jurisdictional question, Palestine as a state, so any crimes that are committed on the territory of Palestine.
Can't stress enough that this is just the application. It could take months for the court to decide. However, oh my God, will I be the happiest lad in the land if Bibi and Sarah Netanyahu will no longer be able to go to their retirement vacations in Europe? One of Bibi's corruption cases has to do with bribery via hundreds and hundreds of expensive champagne bottles, and now he may have to drink all of them alone in his basement instead of abroad. Yeah. This is an application. It could get denied still. I will talk about like the worst outcomes and the best outcomes in a little bit. I'm just giving you guys more background. Okay, we're going to get there. Hold on.
Palestine falls within its jurisdiction, and any crimes committed by a Palestinian national in Israel would also fall within its jurisdiction. So it's not going to be a question of jurisdiction. It's an evidential question. And certainly what we've seen so far, what has been said by Karim Khan today, and what we've been seeing for the last few months, very clearly, there is a very strong evidential basis.
This is not both sizing it, robber guy, man. That you are susceptible to the right-wing framing on the issue if you think this is both sizing it. I know I've seen a lot of people criticize the ICC decision here for also putting Palestinian resistance group leaders in the application in and of itself. The reality of the matter is there were war crimes committed. Sure, in an act of resistance against an apartheid state, ultimately, but war crimes nonetheless. In order for an international organ of justice to truly remain impartial in this process, they are, of course, going to do this as well, especially because they are, in my opinion, right now, going on a tightrope. But this goes back to another really scary potential scenario that I have in my mind, which I will talk about in a little bit. Just wait.
For those arrest warrants to be granted.
I mean, we have seen in the past arrest warrants not being enforced by South Africa, most recently. So does this end up being any more than grandstanding if nobody arrests them?
Well, I wouldn't say that it's grandstanding. Of course, what Karim Khan has done, and again, he's taken the rather extraordinary step of making this public now, which is something he didn't do with the Putin arrest warrant. But of course, I think
it's crazy they wouldn't. The prosecutor himself said he would undermine the entire process and institution if they were selective in its applications, especially given the war crimes on October 7th. Yes. Like, resistance leaders, call them terrorists. Well, what are you talking about? I'm not considering Israel to be resistance leaders. Israel are the terrorists in this situation. Just like I called the top of your ad break. Fuck. God damn it. Oh, no. Okay. Fuck you. Damn it. God damn it. You got me. You got me with a double bait, too. You got me in a double bind, you fucking piece of shit. Calm like a Tom. Thank you for the 20 gifted subs. Allowing 20 people to resist against the top of the hour ad break. Fuck. Echoplex, thank you for the 5 gifted subs. If you also want to no longer see those ads and you're not lucky enough to get gifted a sub, then all you need to do is subscribe on your own for $5 or for free with a Twitch Prime by connecting your Amazon Prime account to your Twitch account, where you get one free Prime subscription a month. Use it on your favorite broadcaster. Hopefully that is me. Here is the 3-minute ad break now. Kami Cole, thank you for the 10 gifted subs. Is the scary outcome that the entire Western world throws out the idea that ICC and UN altogether, completely illegitimating the institution, because that's all I see happening from at least US, UK, and Germany? No, that's not the scary outcome. No, I don't. If the ICC doesn't actually move forward with this prosecution, they're already an illegitimate entity anyway. They are not doing what they're supposed to, which is prosecute war criminals for their war crimes. So obviously, it doesn't fucking matter. Now, what you need to understand here, and I know we're going to talk about Lindsey Graham chirping too. God, it's so sweet. It's so sweet how fucking angry they are. It makes me so happy. It makes me so fucking happy to see them chirping, dude. How do you even resist then without committing some degree of war crimes? Do you want them to be polite and tiptoe their way around apartheid? The shitty-ass UN conventions are designed specifically to enable continued colonial relations to punish only domestic crimes, since they were made in response to Nazi Germany doing crimes against their own European population, not their colonies. I don't think you understand my point, okay? Like, there are things that you do that would be considered bad and wrong, and then there are things that you do that go beyond that. Civilian population centers being targeted would be a thing that goes above and beyond, okay? Especially in an offensive posture. I understand, I understand the animosity that people feel towards the ICC for this moment, in this specific moment, but like, there are certain things that you are not allowed to do. It can actually move the conversation in a positive direction ultimately, but it still doesn't change the reality that there are actions that are ultimately unacceptable being taken by resistance groups. Anyway, I will get to all of this in a second. Let me just finish this, please. I beg of you.
He's hopeful, as we've heard from him today, that this will have more of a preventative effect to prevent further crimes from being committed. We've also heard from Netanyahu, and we've been listening to Israeli leaders with this rhetoric over the past few weeks that nothing will stop them. But of course, what it does mean is that...
Why doesn't your title also point out the ICC is also pursuing Hamas? Because that's not a very interesting part of this conversation. Hamas is already considered a terror organization. The International Criminal Court pursuing a terror organization that is outside of American interest, outside of the American sphere of influence, is not unique, is not news. Dog bites man is not news. Man bites dog, that's fucking news. Okay? I don't know if I have to walk you through this like a baby. I don't know if you recognize this. Hamas, a terror organization? That's brave of you. What? Oh God, why do all the fucking Redditors have this exact same way of like typing? And they're just like, Hamas, a terror organization? That's brave of you. Fucking got him. Thanks, man. Seems like you weren't really interested in understanding why I do certain things, and simply were in here to just be a fucking smarmy little asshole. Great response, lol. What? Calling out that you're being a smarmy little asshole after I fucking actually answered your question because I assumed charitability in your question? What do you mean great response? You do not give anything to me to actually respond with the dignity that it would deserve. The fuck? Chatters will literally come in here and be like, Hasan, rich socialist, fucking asshole. You're a bad guy. And then when I turn around and I'm like, that's dumb. Why are you saying these things? We've addressed this a million times over. You go, guess you have no answers for my questions. It's like, no, I did. I did give you the answer. Okay? Let's continue.
The warrants issued by the International Criminal Court, we have seen what happened in South Africa with al-Bashir. I think it's unlikely that we would see the same. What almost certainly will happen will be European states, predominantly European states who are members of the ICC, will try to deter Netanyahu and his defense minister from actually traveling to those countries because they would be obligated to arrest.
Right. Toby Cadman, thank you very much indeed.
I mean, the term both sidism, as I understand it, as it applies to political rhetoric and communication when in asymmetrical conflicts, people rhetorically equate two sides with widely different degrees of power. Don't think it really applies when discussing decisions of international legal bodies. Maybe our brain has been a little broken by that phrase. Yeah. The systemic rape charges would have to be substantiated at the ICC. They won't be able to rely on heresy. Yeah, that's the other aspect of this as well. And as far as I understand, there's only one instance of like first-hand accounts, and the idea or hearsay. Okay, well, regardless, there's the idea that this is like top-down directed beyond like the New York Times reporting Screams Without Violence, which was like which was literally criticized by a shit ton of academics and journalists for the horrible way in which they conducted themselves throughout that supposed piece of investigative reporting. It's beyond that. They need like substantive evidence, right? And having said that, there could be there probably is more evidence on multiple sexual assaults. This is a common occurrence in times of conflict in general. However, to direct it back to like some kind of command structure where they are like purposely saying like, yeah, rape them, like mass rapes committed in the name of resistance or whatever, is going to need a shit ton more evidence to substantiate a claim such as that one. And I don't think they have it, but you know, what do I know? I am not bald, nor am I heading the ICC. Why isn't the United States a member of the ICC or the Rome Statute? Because we do war crimes a lot. And we also literally have it in our law, we have it within our legal framework to actually invade Netherlands if they ever do choose to prosecute us. You know, you already have a bunch of psychopathic American congresspersons already threatening the International Criminal Court. Yet another day of America bad with Hasan. We are surely having a real hard time shaking off the narrative that we are the bad guys. America doesn't recognize the International Criminal Court, but the court sure as hell will recognize what happens when you target our allies. Anyway, let's get to the prosecutor. Brian Mast doesn't have a leg to stand on here. He really doesn't. He has no standing on this, for sure. Very lame of him to say such things. I agree. Now let's look at what this bald man has to say.
Karim Khan, welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me.
And of course, we're here at the ICC. You are today announcing that you are applying for arrest warrants for top military and political leadership in the Israel-Gaza war since the October 7th events. First and foremost, explain to me exactly what you're asking for and who you are charging.
Today, Christian, we've applied for warrant.
Such a Hasan fan, but I'm literally struggling with the Hamas takes. I can only conclude that I'm either uninformed on his opinions or I am a moron. Wait, what do you mean? I don't think you are a moron. What are you confused by? My trolling account?
To the pretrial chamber of the International Criminal Court.
Israel-Gaza war, fuck you. What do you mean? She literally said October 7 incidents. Okay? That is like, you're out of your mind if you think that that is the framing on October 7 being anything but like the worst atrocity since the Holocaust upon Jewish people or whatever is instantly going to cause me to believe that this will be a relatively tame interview. Okay? That's a genuine change of attitude and genuine change of pace in the way that you're communicating it.
In relation to 3 individuals that are Hamas members. Sinwar, who's in charge on the ground.
That's Yahya Sinwar?
Absolutely. Dave, who's in charge of the Al-Qasim Brigade. And Hania, who's one of their political bureau based in Doha.
Let me just, for everybody to understand, Yahya Sinwar is the head of what they call the Islamic Resistance Movement, Hamas, the military operation, or even wider. Muhammad Diab Ibrahim al-Masri, otherwise known as Dave, Commander-in-Chief of the military wings Al-Qasim Brigade, and Ismail Hania, head of the Hamas Political Bureau. What are the charges?
The charges are extermination, murder, taking of hostages, rape and sexual assault in detention. So these are the key crimes that are alleged to have been committed by these 3 individuals. The world was shocked on the 7th of October when people were ripped from their bedrooms, from their homes, from the different kibbutzim in Israel. And people have suffered enormously. And we have a variety of evidence to support the applications that we've submitted to the judges.
And just tell us what the evidence is. Obviously, the world has seen the real-time images. The Israeli government...
What is this? What are you saying? Genuinely trying to learn, asked the Discord and got mixed answers. My campus pro-Palestine protest in Oregon, the DSA started putting on flyers and posts saying Hamas are freedom fighters, and October 7th was a resistance battle, not a terrorist act. Yet you seem to say the opposite. I'm hearing so many different messages from leftists. I'm just lost and confused. October 7 is an act of resistance that contained a shit ton of atrocities. There were definitely acts of terror against a civilian population. Okay? Every single instance of resisting against a violent occupation, resisting against an apartheid, resisting against, colonial occupation by the British, whether it be the IRA, whether it be the Algerian forces fighting against the French colonial occupation in Algeria, has always led to a shit ton of terror, even from the resistance forces. Okay, this is precisely the reason why you have the Viet Cong, and their engagements against the civilian population would still be considered acts of terror when you hyper focus on their actions. But when you pull yourself out, as we look at historical resistance against occupation, when you pull yourself out of that and you look at the broader conflict, as we do when we have the benefit of hindsight, we often never consider the death and destruction or the individual acts of terror that resistance groups engage in. The Nat Turner Rebellion is another example of this. And the reason for why we don't look at that is because you look at the greatest evil in that situation. The greatest evil in that situation is always being done by the colonial occupation. The greatest evil always being done is done by the apartheid regime. The greater evil always being done is done by the slavers, right? Something to always consider is that the standard for violence is always set by the occupying entity, the force with all of the power in this equation. Okay? Wait, dude, that guy said something absolutely insane. Where What did he say? He said something like rape is wait, well, come on. You guys banned him so quickly. Like hold on. I have to literally pull this. I have to pull this user really quickly. Dude. I personally brought up numerous examples in this situation where it was white on white violence as well, for the record. I never said rape is good, and I never brought up white people and like fighting against white people. What are you fucking arguing on? What the fuck are you saying? Are you on drugs? Why did you decide to bring up an entirely different point that I never made? What happened in those 3 years? I don't even want to know what happened in those 3 years. So many. Sorry, BB just joined to hear you say some bad stuff happened, but right after watching a video about SA accusations, what? I'm sorry, guys, but like this is the reason why I can never have healthy discourse with a lot of people, because for them, I'm not arguing against like actual points that I'm making. I'm arguing against what points they've made up in their own fucking minds. Like, I can't battle your demons, man. Like, how am I supposed to give you a conclusive answer when the assertions that you're making are just they're born out of not facts, not something that you actually heard, but instead things that you personally fucking came up with on your mind. I'm fighting your own demons. I'm fighting your own personal hallucinations in this situation. Anyway, let's continue.
The government has put out videos which is shared to the UN and others, journalists, about what happened. There are body cams on many of the Hamas fighters, whoever was there at the time. Is that the evidence, or do you have more?
We have more. We have authenticated videos and photographs. We have CCTV camera pictures. We have eyewitness evidence. We have evidence of survivors. I mean, it's remarkable, the victims and survivors that have, from Israel, that have engaged with my office, have this righteous demand for justice and accountability. They've come here. I've also met them in the different kibbutzim, and they want justice and accountability. So we have also expert evidence. So there's a whole variety of information that we have authenticated, that we think is relevant and probative, and that is sufficient, we say, to sustain the crimes that we put forward to the judges.
You have also issued warrants against the top political and military leadership of the government of the State of Israel.
We've applied for warrants. Of course, the judges must determine whether or not to issue them, but we've applied today. We'll apply for warrants for Prime Minister Netanyahu and also Minister of Defense Gallant for the crimes of causing extermination, causing starvation as a method of war, including the denial of humanitarian relief supplies, deliberately targeting civilians in conflict. And the sad thing really is in relation to both categories. I have been saying repeatedly in Cairo in October last year, at the Rafah crossing, on Israeli television, in Ramallah, everywhere I can, to the parties to the conflict, comply now, don't complain later. And of course, hostages have not been released. That insidious crime, it continues for so many innocent Israelis that are in custody, are held hostage by Hamas, and families that are waiting for their return. And of course, we see pictures of starving children, of emaciated children. We have a variety of evidence to support, not polemics, but evidence that's been forensically analysed to sustain the charge also of starvation being used by Netanyahu and Gallant as a method of war. And it's awful that in 2024 we have had to submit these applications to the judges of the ICC.
He's so careful in talking about Israel, pretty confident when referring to Hamas. Yeah, no shit, because like saying that you're prosecuting the leaders of a fucking group of individuals that have been declared a terror organization by like every fucking international government is super easy. Okay? They're automatically considered the bad guys. That's the whole purpose of the fucking designation of terrorism. Okay? On the other hand, however, him prosecuting Israel and following along with that prosecution could potentially mean invading the fucking Netherlands, okay? Obviously, I don't think it'll get to that level, but it is technically in the American rule book. So yeah, of course he's being very careful when talking about Israel. That is precisely the reason why Israel is in the title and Hamas is not. Like, this is the most significant aspect of this investigation and prosecution, okay? That is the actually interesting and unique part about this. Much more than, I would say, issuing an arrest warrant for Vladimir Putin, for example. Because Vladimir Putin and the Russian government is completely outside of the sphere of influence of the United States. These international organs of justice, every matter of, like, international organization that operates in the Western world, whether it be the UN, whether it be the ICC, the ICJ, all of these organs of justice and international cooperation have historically, like post-World War II, when many of these things like started, many of these institutions were formed, have always worked at the behest of American empire, have always worked alongside the interests of Western imperialism. Okay? This is one of the only instances that I can think of where they are directly against the things that America is doing, the things that America cares about, the things that America is defending. Okay? That is the reason why he is more careful when talking about Israel, of course.
For warrants.
I'm going to get into starvation as a weapon of war in a moment, but first...
What's the difference between ICC and ICJ? ICC prosecutes people for war crimes. ICJ is an international court of justice where states can prosecute other states.
First, I want to ask you, the word genocide has been used by both sides, and many believe that genocide is being committed, but you do not. You're not using that word.
Well, this is an active investigation, and we have criminal charges that we can use: genocide, war crimes, and crimes against humanity. In relation to this current stage of investigations, the charges that we've put forward to the judges do not include genocide, but we are continuing to investigate. It's a very complex situation. We've not been allowed access into Gaza by the Israeli authorities. We're also continuing our investigations in relation to the Hamas attacks, and if and when the evidence points us in a particular direction, we will not hesitate to act. So it's still an active investigation, but yes, today we haven't.
What is extermination?
It's mass killing.
Different than genocide?
Yes. Genocide is defined by specific intent, not only killing, but an intention to destroy the group in whole or in part. So it's a specific intent to destroy the group in whole or in part. So we have not included in our application today a request for warrants for the crime of genocide.
So extermination, war crimes, crimes against humanity. I want to ask you about starvation because...
N-word discourse for genocide? Bro, he's a lawyer. This is the only fucking part. He's a prosecutor. The only part in which like the semantics bullshit actually plays a role is that there is no current real decision. We all know that what Israel is doing is genocidal, okay? Obviously. But the ICJ court process has not moved along to come to that conclusion. Like, he can't, as a prosecutor, he can't come across as partial in this process. If he were to fucking chirp like you or I and be like, what Israel's doing is genocide, and we're going to fucking take these genocidal monster fascists to court and we're going to take them down, then yeah, everyone would be like, what the fuck are you saying? They have to play this song and dance. It's kind of funny to get mad at him in this circumstance when he's like engaging in legalese and you know, doing something. Like, his actions are what you need to focus on rather than the way he is conducting himself. His actions are very much against American interests in this circumstance, and that's precisely why, as we will get to inevitably after this conversation is over, everyone is losing their fucking minds, bro. You have Matt Miller clashing with the reporters as he smears the ICC investigation. You have the moderate perspective from Israel, Caroline Glick, senior contributing editor at JNS. The ICC is a neo-Nazi institution. Lindsey Graham wrote an entire Quran worth of fucking text in here, being like, we have to literally fight against the ICC no matter what the cost. If these decisions were not significant and definitely different than the way that these processes have operated in the past, okay, you wouldn't hear Representative Brian Mast, doesn't have a leg to stand on this issue, okay, chirp like he is going to invade the Netherlands himself personally, okay? He's going to drop in there with a child's parachute because he's much lighter than the average adult. And just go to town like the Terminator. And for the record, of course, everyone in Israel, including the fucking liberals, are acting like this is unconscionable. The ICC arrest warrants are complete moral failure. We cannot accept the outrageous comparison between Netanyahu and Sinwar, between the leaders of Israel and the leaders of Hamas. Yeah. Yeah, we can't make that comparison because the leaders of Israel are worse. Okay? That's just the truth of the matter. And for many in the world, they see this reality. Of course, good luck trying to explain this to a singular Zionist, no matter what their fucking background is. Wait, I'm not from America? Can America just like invade the Netherlands? Is it a joke? This is my favorite part of the broadcast. For the past 10 years, whenever people talk about how America is not bad at all, what the fuck are you talking about? I almost always bring up this wonderful factoid that yes, in 2002, we passed a law in our Congress that says that if America or any of its allies, any active service members, any American citizen whatsoever is ever prosecuted by the International Criminal Court and is extradited, we will invade The Hague. It is colloquially known as the Invade the Hague Act, also known as the American Service Members Protection Act. Here it is. It's a United States federal law described as a bill to protect United States military personnel and other elected and appointed officials of the United States government against criminal prosecution by an international criminal court to which the United States is not a party. The text of the act has been codified as subchapter 2, chapter 81, blah, 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 blah. The act gives the president power to use all means necessary and appropriate to bring about the release of any U.S. or allied personnel being detained or imprisoned by, on behalf of, or at the request of the International Criminal Court. Why would we do that in 2002? What a significant year. There is a law that we passed in Congress that dictates that if an American citizen, if any kind of American service member, active duty, or vice versa, is ever brought up to the International Criminal Court, if they are extradited to the International Criminal Court, the U.S. Hague Invasion Act will kick in. You heard that right. We will invade the Hague. U.S. President George Bush today signed into law the American Service Members Protection Act. That's what it was called, which is intended to intimidate countries that ratify the treaty for the International Criminal Court. The new law authorizes the use of military force to liberate any American. The full list of people covered in the text of the bill. The term covered allied persons means military personnel, elected or appointed officials, and other persons employed by or working on behalf of the government of a NATO member country, a major non-NATO ally, including Australia, Egypt, Israel, Japan, Jordan, Argentina, the Republic of Korea, New Zealand, or Taiwan. Y'all insane, mate? Actually cooked? It's just bad guy shit. The faster you come to that recognition, the easier a lot of this becomes to understand. This does not mean that like all of the decisions that America makes is bad, or it certainly does not mean that like America's enemies are good. A key distinction that no one seems to understand when I talk about it. It's just America big bad, and then other countries also bad, just not as big bad as America in many instances. There can be certain circumstances where other countries are worse, okay, in hyper-specific scenarios, but ultimately, you know, this is big bad shit. This is big bad guy shit. My favorite of those pro-Israelis who are about for Ukraine, I think there's probably more people in Israel that are about that are more pro-Russia. Most of the pro-Israel, pro-Ukraine people are in America because their positions just simply align with whatever the fuck the American State Department is interested in. GOP reps introduced bill to extend U.S. government service members benefit under SCRA and USERRA to U.S. citizens serving in the IDF. That's awesome. Over 20,000 American citizens are currently defending Israel from Hamas terrorists. I hope they stay there. I hope that they are prosecuted as war criminals, never to return back to the United States of America ever again. In a truly just world, that's what would happen. Anyway, as our closest ally in the Middle East continues to defend itself against terror, many brave Americans have decided to lend a hand, said Miller. I'm proud that this legislation extends important protections to those Americans who chose to risk their lives in the fight against terror. That's crazy. Regarding that DSA chatter, look, after mentioning 76 years of oppression and occupation, you'll hear, okay, but no historical context justifies massacring civilians like that. I agree with that. Even though those same people fail to apply that standard to the context of the war. Once you're at that point, the important questions that rise are then what's driving the conflict and who has the power to stop it? Questions which get much clearer answers upon any serious look into history. Yeah. The TLDR of that is Israel is responsible for October 7 and any kind of violence that Israeli citizens have experienced as a consequence of the Israeli apartheid regime. Israel has all the power to stop this conflict. Israel has all the power to stop the genocide. Israel has all the power to give full-blown civil protections and civil liberties to every single Palestinian living under its settler colonial occupation. Approximately 50% of the Israeli population is Russian speaking. Yeah, Amal Clooney is a little bit involved in the case as well, which is cool. Is there any hope for Israel and Palestine to stop fighting and be able to come to some solution, whatever it may be, without international interference? No. Why haven't the surrounding Arab powers attacked Israel to stop them? Much to consider here. Why haven't they? Yeah, why haven't they used their American ordnance, American precision guided munitions, American fighter jets, and American trained soldiers to go and fight Israel? That's crazy. Why don't they fly their American jets out of American military bases only to fly back to get refueled by other American, like direct American service members? Anyway, big bad shit. Something to remember and something to consider. The International Criminal Court has no jurisdiction in Israel. My man popping off like Bryan Singer, dude. Tom Cotton popping off like he's about to be he's about to be indicted on sex crimes against minors. There is no international criminal court jurisdiction in Israel, okay? That's why I'm traveling there. I'll have you know, there's no extradition policy to the United States either.
Although it was accepted by the ICC as a war crime when you were created in 1998, I don't believe it's ever been prosecuted before as a weapon of war.
No, it's not that I'm aware of. I think, unfortunately, this situation will be a first, and it's very unusual. We see a population, large numbers of children and women that have already endured more than 17 years of a very rigid regime of allowing goods into Gaza. I think even in 2022, the United Nations and others said that 80% of the population, lived on humanitarian supplies. And that's just become even more pernicious since the 8th of October with all the other restrictions. And, the words of the Secretary General of the United Nations, of the head of the Office of Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs, Martin Griffiths, WHO, UNICEF, I mean, it seems everybody in the international firmament has spoken with grave concern, extreme concern, but we haven't seen food, water, medicines go to the most vulnerable, and they have those rights, not because of something that I'm saying, it's because it's required in the Geneva Conventions and it's required in the Rome Statute.
So, as of April 17th, according to humanitarian organizations and the authorities, whatever exist on the ground in Gaza, 28 children under 12 have died, including 12 babies about a month old, because of malnutrition-related conditions. The Defense Minister, Yoav Gallant, who today you are issuing an arrest warrant, or the request for an arrest warrant for, said on October 9th, 2 days after October 7th, "We are imposing a complete siege. There will be no electricity, no food, no water, no fuel. Everything is closed. We are fighting human animals, and we will act accordingly." Prime Minister Netanyahu on October 13th said, "We will exact a price that will be remembered by them and Israel's other enemies for decades to come." Is that the basis on which you establish intent? Or is that part of your evidence?
Much more than that. But yes, some of the words uttered by the two individuals, Minister of Defence Gallant and Prime Minister Netanyahu, are of course probative and relevant. The fact that so many other individuals have said, words like there's no such thing as an innocent civilian in Gaza, they're all responsible. The words by members of the Security Committee. I mean, there's a whole variety of words that are said and done by the government that have not been disowned, that have not been denied, the two individuals have not disassociated themselves from, and I think that's relevant. But it's a very complex operation. It's not just the denial of aid. It's not only the fact that as an occupying power, Israel has an affirmative obligation to make sure food and the objects indispensable to survival get to the civilians. They have an affirmative obligation. They're in control of the north of Gaza, for example. IDF tanks are in situ. They could guard aid convoys going in and making sure it goes to the camps. They're not doing that. But in addition, one has to look at a wider aspect. Water has been cut off. Electricity has been, plants have been either destroyed or targeted. Fuel can't go in. Desalination plants are completely dysfunctional. There's no desalination plant in the north of Gaza at all. Water purification tablets, filtration systems have been classified as dual-use objects, as have incubators, as has oxygen for hospital, as have anaesthetics. One sees 90% of all the greenhouses in the north of Gaza destroyed. 40% of the land that was used for agriculture has been destroyed since the conflict started. 70% of the fishing vessels. I mean, every avenue that is so important to human survival has been constrained or suffocated because of a policy. And the words of the Secretary General of the United Nations, which said we're at breaking point, the words of UNICEF, the words of UNRWA, saying that we've got a trickle of aid in a sea of need, all of these giants of the international system, their words, their concerns have been put to one side, unfortunately, in the face of other imperatives and what seems to be a bid also for the collective punishment of the people of Gaza.
What is the international law on the restrictions that you're talking about? And for instance, the checking of aid convoys. The Israeli government says it is at war with a terror organization and has worked in coordination with the US, Egypt, and international aid agencies to get aid in. Netanyahu himself on October 29th, after 2 weeks of nothing getting in, another week later said, we must prevent a humanitarian disaster. What do you make of those words? And what is the law on stopping and checking aid convoys?
See, we have to look at words and analyze them.
Dude had like 10 to 15 seconds for the war crimes of Hamas, and now is like 15 minutes of Israel's war crimes. Yeah, seems a little biased in the direction of the truth. So yeah, of course. October 7 is one fucking day. Israel's been doing 10x October 7 for the past 8 months. Of course he's going to spend an unimaginable amount of time on what Israel is doing. And this is what I was trying to stress to people.
Against what is taking place. Prime Minister Netanyahu has been on the record to say that the access of humanitarian aid gives Israel important leeway that is being used. They've talked about a diplomatic iron dome as part of allowing aid in and not allowing aid in and all the rest of it. Israel has every right not to give succor to Hamas. That is not contested. Israel has every right and indeed an obligation to get hostages back. But you must do so by complying with the law. The fact that Hamas fighters need water doesn't justify denying water from all the civilian population of Gaza. There's an obligation. As I said, it's an affirmative. In addition to everything else, there's an affirmative obligation as an occupying power that Israel is to make sure water, medicines, anesthetics, insulin goes to the people that need it. If tanks can go in, why can't those tanks and those soldiers guard aid convoys? So there's a lot of deficiencies that give rise not just to recklessness or negligence or indifference, but seems to be part of a criminal common plan to deny these objects indispensable to the survival of the civilian population. And how many doctors have to talk about amputating the limbs of little babies or children without anesthetic, or how many people need to die without insulin, or how many people with 50% burns can be left by the doctors in the different hospitals because they don't have antibiotic creams for burns and they can't save them without that, for us to realise that the law is being breached. Now, this is what we have analysed, and we've presented it for judges who will make the final decision if warrants should be issued or not.
And again, you say that you have requested these warrants based on a higher level of evidence than is normally required, not just that there's a reasonable belief that it could lead to actual warrants and a charge, but you believe your evidence has what?
Well, when I came in as prosecutor, the standard for a warrant are reasonable grounds to believe. That's what the judges have to determine. Across all our situations, when I became prosecutor, I required the leaders in the office, the heads of the teams, to certify that there's a realistic prospect of conviction. It's not enough in these kinds of cases to have enough to issue a warrant. We must be able to bring it home.
On both sides?
On both sides. And in relation to both, I've determined, and the team are unanimous, that we have a realistic prospect of conviction in relation to the 3 warrants being sought regarding the Hamas leaders, and the 2 that are being sought in relation to Prime Minister Netanyahu and Foreign Minister Gallant. And of course, the judges will decide if you've got it right and our analysis is spot on or not.
I'm going to get to the actual how you effect these warrants, given the practicalities of the situation in a moment. But first, I want to ask you about the so-called political nature that many people will claim. Prime Minister Netanyahu has already said ICC charges would be a scandal on a historic scale, an indelible stain on the idea of justice. Israel's commitment to international law is unwavering. And Netanyahu has also said it would be an anti-Semitic hate crime. Now, we haven't heard anything from Hamas about how they would react. What do you say to that? There must have been a huge amount of pressure on you from all sides to do and not to do.
Well, this court, Christian, is a child of Nuremberg. It was built because of the awful pictures that haunt us today of the Shoah and the gas chambers and then the Balkans, and the list goes on. And we have to look at the evidence.
Yeah. UK's Karim Khan, elected next ICC prosecutor, will replace controversial Bensouda. Said to be Israel's preferred candidate, British lawyer would likely decide whether to move ahead with a planned probe of alleged Israeli Hamas war crimes. Bensouda leaves in June. He was brought there by Israel, America, and the UK's petitioning. That's the other part. That's in 2021, by the way, like when he first came. Irony of the only person arrested is Ismail Haniyeh. Yeah, so, or Yahya, no, or it's Yahya Sinwar that's like the main person that they're prosecuting on the Palestinian side. I think there's 2 other people. One is actually a political person too, which is like weird. One is it's Yahya Sinwar, the head of the Al-Qassam brigades, Dave, and then I guess Ismail Haniyeh is part of the political wing. They aren't even part of the court, and they dictate the prosecutor. I mean, how much can we tell on ourselves? Oh yeah, that's the other part. So the problem here is the worst case scenario, which I haven't even gotten to yet, is when the courts deny the application for a warrant for the Israeli leadership and claim that there isn't enough like ample evidence for war crimes. Okay. And then they only follow through on the Palestinian warrant applications. That is the scary part of this. Now, I don't know. I don't think that'll happen, but that is definitely something that I am legitimately worried about. Because if he fucking turns around and, I mean, if the judges turn around and say, like, there's no ample evidence for Israeli war crimes, is basically giving Israel further permission while simultaneously turning around and being like, but there's an incredible amount of evidence for the Hamas war crimes, and then they follow through on only prosecuting the Hamas leadership. That would be a major blow to the I guess, like, credibility of the courts. But that is what I'm afraid of. Is there no mechanism to ensure the war crimes the resistance commits are not prosecuted in a vacuum, so to speak, e.g. what you're saying? Yeah, I don't know. But yeah, Khan, an assistant U.S. Secretary General, was widely seen as the favorite to get the job, but neither Khan nor any of the other candidates garnered enough support to be appointed by consensus. Khan won on the second ballot with 123 parties to the Rome Statute that established a tribunal. He received 72 votes ahead of Fergal Gaynor of Ireland with 42 votes, Spain's Carlos Castrasana Fernandez with 5 votes, and Francesco Lo Voi of Italy with 3 votes. One member did not vote. Khan has been leading an investigative team set up to investigate allegations of genocide, crimes against humanity, and war crimes committed by the Islamic State group in Iraq. So that could be the major reason as to why they were very interested in him, because he has spent his entire fucking as far as I understand, he spent a big chunk of his prosecutorial career investigating ISIS. He's no stranger to the ICC, having acted as a defense lawyer for the Kenyan Deputy President William Ruto and persuading judges to throw out prosecution charges against his client. The ICC prosecutor holds a position that is one of the toughest in international law due to the court's mandate to prosecute war crimes, crimes against humanity, and genocide. The Trump administration also slapped sanctions on the Gambian-born Bensouda, if you guys recall, and one of her top aides last year for continuing to investigate war crime allegations against Americans, although the court often was criticized in the past for its focus on African crimes. So this was something that the liberals were upset about not that long ago under the Trump administration. When Trump did this shit, liberals were like chirping about how bad it is. How bad it is that America is doing such a thing. The Biden administration has signaled a less confrontational line, but has not said whether it will drop sanctions against Bensouda, who has attacked the unacceptable measures. What an incredible thing, by the way. In a major decision last Friday, a pretrial chamber of the ICC determined that The Hague has jurisdiction to open a criminal investigation into Israel and the Palestinians for war crimes alleged to have taken place in the West Bank, Gaza Strip, and East Jerusalem, paving the way for a full investigation after a 5-year preliminary probe opened by Bensouda. Bensouda indicated in 2019 that a criminal investigation, if approved, would focus on the 2014 Israel-Hamas conflict, Operation Protective Edge. Because this article is from 2021, chat. Because Israel's war crimes did not begin or end after October 7. It certainly did not begin after October 7. Israel's entire existence is predicated upon a crime, the Nakba, and Israel's maintenance of its own nation state has also continued to churn out a metric ton of war crimes. Things to consider. Important things to consider. You might be, if you're a newcomer, if you're like a post-October 7 guy who just only recently started paying attention to Israel's actions, you might be confused. You might be going, that's weird. This article is from 2021. What would the ICC do in terms of investigating Israeli war crimes? I thought that was just like a new thing that they're doing. Fuck no. Hania is the chairman of the political bureau. Dave is the overall head of the Izzadin al-Qassam brigades, whereas Sinwar leads Hamas in Gaza. Sinwar was actually released as a part of the Gilad Shalit deal way back in 2011. Yes, I remember. Something that Israelis will never let anyone forget in general. That's why they are very upset about even any kind of hostage release on the Palestinian side, some Israelis will always point to Yahya Sinwar and be like, he is the butcher, he is the architect of October 7. And you know, look at the last time we released any of these Palestinian terrorists. At which point they released thousands of Palestinian hostages from Israeli detention facilities, including some high-profile ones like Yahya Sinwar, for the release of Gilad Shalit. Why do you think they push the sexual violence allegations that have been fairly debunked? Do they have evidence we haven't seen? Maybe. Khan has been leading an investigative team. He's no stranger to the ICC. We covered that. Bensouda indicated in 2019 that they would do a probe for Israel's response to the Hamas-led protest, by the way, Times of Israel. That was not a Hamas-led protest. That was a peaceful protest, only turned violent by the fact that Israel just shot a bunch of peaceful protesters in the leg and killed hundreds. Are you telling the whole story? Yes, I am. If it comes across like it's one-sided, it's because, unfortunately, for many who want to defend Israel and its existence, it is not a one-sided story. I mean, it is a one-sided story, sorry. The whole story at the top of the hour? Wait, what? Fuck! Again? Another one? Bro, I'm in such a good fucking mood this morning because like I said, I woke up at 6:30 and I saw that beautiful bald man say, Benjamin Netanyahu, we are applying for an arrest warrant for you. And ever since then, I've just been getting fucked. God damn it, dude. I just got double tapped. I'm losing my touch because I'm so fucking elated, okay? Andrew Filer, thank you for the 10 gifted subs. Allowing 10 people to no longer see the ads at the top of the fucking hour. I need an Iron Dome to defend myself against these debates, bro. Shit is not all right. Shit is not all right. It's messed up. Sakura Gore, thank you for the 10 gifted subs, allowing 10 people to also no longer see the ads at the top of the hour. If you are not lucky enough to receive a gifted sub, you can make your own luck by subscribing for $5 or for free. With a Twitch Prime, that is. Twitch Prime is free. By connecting your Amazon Prime account to your Twitch account, you get one free Prime subscription a month. Here's a 3-minute ad break now. 9.69 is the rating on that segue. God damn. Nice. Hamas Sinwar specifically repeatedly said that they were intentionally keeping the Great March of Return protest peaceful. The IDF killed over 200 people and injured 36,000. Yes, 36,000. They wounded them permanently. And Hamas showed an extreme level of restraint and did not launch a response. No, they also sent, at the time, Hamas sent footage of their snipers trained on Israeli officers on the other side of the fucking border fence. Famously. During the Great March of Return, they had their snipers trained from positions that the Israelis had no idea that they were at, directly behind enemy lines in certain instances. And they sent them footage of their optics. They said, we have, be careful with what you do. We could execute your snipers if we wanted to. Or, sorry, that wasn't Hamas. That was Palestinian Islamic Jihad. You're right. Fuck. Sorry. I'm using the Palestinian resistance groups as a catch-all term here. And the IDF, in a brilliant display of ultra-nationalist arrogance, looked at that footage and said, they are too afraid to kill our officers. They did not perceive the threat. They literally said at the time, see, they could kill our people if they wanted to, but they won't because they're so afraid of our might. Think about how fucking insane that is. That is the hubris only born out of the arrogant display of supremacist attitude that is consistently recycled through every fucking orifice, okay, of the apartheid regime. The only reason why you look at a situation like that and not go, oh my fucking God, this is genuinely, this is fucking insane. This is a massive lapse in security. So perhaps it should not come as a surprise that they also refuse to recognize the real threat that an October 7 style attack was coming to Israel when other regional actors communicated that there was a lot of mobilization occurring inside of Gaza and outside. That, before October 7, Israel got prior warning. Israel threatens to kill Hamas leaders in response to the Islamic Jihad video. Iran-backed group shows footage of IDF's head of Southern Command and top liaison to the Palestinians on crosshairs on the Gaza border. The threats by the PIJ terror organization to shoot IDF soldiers by snipers on Gaza constitutes crossing a red line. Transportation and Intelligence Minister Israel Katz tweeted, Hamas must know that any attack on IDF commanders at the border to Gaza will immediately lead to a renewal of targeted killings of Hamas leadership. Anyway. That's crazy. I just came in. Can you talk about the ICC warrants? Do they have meaning or not just yet? Come on, brother. Of course I'm talking about the ICC warrants all day, every day. Once you start military action, we missed the fucking Hasbara troll. You guys clapped him too hard. He said Hamas brought this upon the Palestinian population. It's an unfortunate side effect of war. Yeah, war started in 1948, or even before then, really. So the idea that Hamas started it is really stupid and only demonstrates your lack of knowledge on the matter. Especially ironic considering that we're currently not even talking about post-October 7 actions, but instead talking about things that happened many years prior to October 7. So perhaps if you were a little bit interested and actually intellectually curious, you would recognize that reality, the reality of what we are currently talking about, and maybe develop a better understanding of the dynamics of power at play. This way, you could potentially develop better counters rather than just saying the same NPC talking points that are easily dismissed over and over again.
And the way I very simply try to do things is look at the evidence, look at the conduct, look at the victims and airbrush out the nationality. And if a crime's been committed, we should move forward. Nobody is above the law. No people by dint of birth or passport, religion, nationality, or the colour of their skin have a get-out-of-jail-free card, have a free pass to say, well, the law doesn't apply to us. This is a moment when we see in the shadow of Ukraine a increasing cacophony of noise, of double standards and selectivity. And what we're trying to do is not go with the tide of emotion, but take our time, move as effectively as we can, but be guided by evidence. And every human life, every baby that is killed, whether it's a baby that's cruelly abducted by Hamas and killed, or a baby that's been bombed or killed or has died in incubators because of no electricity or water or food in Gaza, for them, for their...
Does that Hosbert troll realize he just tried to justify knowingly killing citizens using collective punishment as the logic? Doesn't even try to avoid that? Well, at least he's honest. There's honesty in that. Much more honesty than like the way that oftentimes CNN tries to cover this story, cover this ethnic cleansing campaign.
Families and humanity, it's a tragedy. And this is why we have a court. It's about the equal application of the law. No people are better than another. No people anywhere are saints. And so we have to apply a yardstick of legality to conduct. We've done that, and this is why we've made the applications that the judges must determine.
I'm going to read you some heavy criticism that you've received from the United States. As we know, the United States is not a party to the ICC, nor is Israel. Recently, when word came out that this may be happening at some point, U.S. senators and U.S. congresspeople, mostly Republicans, wrote you a letter signed by Senator Tom Cotton, Mitch McConnell, Ted Cruz, Marco Rubio, and others. This is the quote: "Target Israel and we will target you. If you move forward with the measures indicated in the report, we will move to end all American support for the ICC, sanction your employees and associates, and bar you and your families from the United States. You have been warned." Is that a threat?
I think that's the plain meaning of it in English. But, you know, there's hotheads everywhere, and there's people that are mature statesmen and stateswomen and leaders. There are those that have fidelity to something greater than themselves, whether it's their constitutions, but ultimately it's the rule of law. The good news is, I think, for the last 2.5 years, we've had very positive engagement with the Biden administration in the United States. We're working across a range of situations, whether it's in Ukraine or Darfur. And I've said to distinguished members on the Hill and to the administration that Rome Statute values are quintessential.
This was such a sick moment in this interview where he's just like, listen, bro, you tried to interfere in the affairs of the ICC. You might be in the crosshairs of our jurisdiction all of a sudden, which again, you know, he is in direct violation of the Invasion of the Hague Act in that situation. But hey, what are you going to do?
American values. It's against bullying. It's against the untrammeled power against the most vulnerable. It's the rights and the dignity of the individual. It's the protection of babies. I mean, these are fundamental American values that should engender bipartisan support. Now, of course, this situation, unfortunately, lies on the San Andreas fault of international politics and strategic interests. And of course, I've had some elected leaders speak to me and be very blunt. This court is built for Africa and for thugs like Putin, was what one senior leader told me. We don't do it like that.
It's like, bro, you're not supposed to fucking prosecute white people in the West. Excuse me. What do you think you're doing? Bro, they admitted it. Yeah, I know. That's my favorite part about like things moving in this direction is the brutal honesty that you hear from the supposed defenders of the rule-based international order. As I have said before, you know, that just means we make the rules and we give the orders, right? Here's Mike Johnson, House Speaker Mike Johnson, condemning the top prosecutor for the ICC seeking arrest warrants for Netanyahu and Gallant. If the ICC is allowed to threaten Israeli leaders, ours could be next. Here is a beautiful, beautiful bipartisanship moment. Democratic leader Chuck Schumer calls it profoundly unfair and reprehensible for the ICC prosecutor to issue warrants for Israeli leaders who have led the killing of 35,000 plus people and displacement of 2 million while killing more hostages than they've saved. Little column A, little column B for you guys, okay? The ICC is incinerating its credibility, says Ted Cruz. It is disgracefully equating our democratic Israeli allies with genocidal terrorists and, in the process, far exceeding its authority, thus setting itself up to target Americans next. The U.S. cannot stand by while any of this happens. It is time for the ICC to face catastrophic consequences and sanctions. Pretty funny that these guys are chirping because the ICC is finally doing its job that extends outside of its prior boundaries of just, you know, operating alongside American interests. Here's Ben Shapiro. I'm tempted to say who gives a shit about the ICC, mainly because no one with half a brain should give a shit about the ICC. But some apparently do because, oh, wow, the magical morality of checks notes is European bureaucrats. So let me explain. This is an institution that doesn't include the U.S., Russia, India, China, Indonesia, Turkey, among others. It has attempted to investigate American soldiers for doing their jobs in Afghanistan. It's trash. Those ICC bureaucrats have the gall to think Israeli war criminals should be treated the same as all other war criminals. If only they were enlightened like you, they'd understand that Israel is above the law and above accountability for their atrocities. Yep. Just following orders from Ben. Doing their jobs in Afghanistan. Yeah, their jobs. What's that phrase again? You shouldn't be scared if you haven't done anything wrong. Yeah. Yeah, there is a multifaceted line of attack coming from all of the liberals and all of the reactionary conservatives. Just, you know, something to pay attention to. The beautiful bipartisanship that they've been able to arrive at. Isn't that great?
This court is the legacy of Nuremberg. This court is a sad indictment of humanity. This court should be the triumph of law over power and brute force. Grab what you can, take what you want, do what you will. And we're going to simply be, we're not going to be dissuaded by threats or any other activities, because in the end we have to fulfill our responsibility.
By the way, this is why I laugh whenever motherfuckers are like, oh, there's actually great discourse in Israel. How dare you say that? There's a phenomenal amount of discourse in Israel. There's a lot of, it's a democracy. And it's like, and we hate Benjamin Netanyahu, actually, as a healthy democracy would. And we will vote him out. And it's like, okay, so when the ICC is like, yeah, he's doing war crimes, we want to arrest him. Why do you fucking turn around and go, oh, actually, we've decided that the ICC is the worst institution? What happened? Where's the discourse now, bitch? I thought you hated Benjamin Netanyahu. The fuck happened? Where's your hatred for Benjamin Netanyahu now? You dumb fucks. I thought he was bad. I thought you hated him. all of a sudden, liberal discourse, as long as it's neatly within the confines of Israel's fascist behavior being considered totally morally permissible and not reprehensible, even though it is, the moment that you fucking go a little bit left from that, the neat little confines that they've packaged themselves inside of, all of a sudden, well, not like that. Political discourse can only be done on the boundaries that we, the genocidal apartheid regime, has dictated as acceptable. If you go outside of it, then we will kill you with our police force. We will break your fucking skull. It's bullshit. It's fucking bullshit. It's always been bullshit.
As prosecutors, as the men and women of the office, as judges, as the registry, to something bigger than ourselves, which is the fidelity to justice. And
yeah, I tried to say this earlier, but the fact that Yair Lapid, the face of the Israeli left, more so than Benny Gantz, which, by the way, Yair Lapid is not a leftist. This is Israeli chatter, and I know he knows this as well. But, like, he's supposedly functionally the face of the Israeli left, more so than even Benny Gantz, even though he is not a leftist either, obviously. And even he is, and yeah, the face of the Israeli left, more so than Benny Gantz, not in popularity. Shilled to Bibi in that tweet you showed earlier of his, once again, reinforces the notion that the Israeli left does not exist and maybe never has. I don't know, I'm young. Even the most, like, allowed in mainstream discourse, most leftist position is still liberal Zionism. And even then, liberal Zionism ends up defending some of the most right-wing, most genocidal elements. Gantz isn't considered left. He's considered center. Lapid is considered more left. I know. I'm saying that, like, from our understanding of politics, just like if there's a universal application of principles and political ideology, neither of these guys would be considered left. They would be, I mean, it's just, I don't know how to describe it. It's like saying the American left, all right? And even then, none of them reach, like, the opinion of a Bernie Sanders or an AOC or any number of people in the squad. Like, the actual left is again, ascetic, tiny, marginal, considered radical, and destroyed in Israeli Knesset, like Israeli politics. It's obviously the likes of Ofer Kasif, and they're mostly seen as, like, the Arab party in general. As far as, like, the Jewish parties in Israel, the furthest left you're getting to is, I guess, fucking is Yair Lapid, which once again is ridiculous. He's not leftist by any means. Bro, 106 MK signed a letter condemning the ICC and defending Bibi and Gallant. This is everyone except Hadash, Tal, Ram, and Labor, totaling 14 seats. Bro, this is like if a progressive Chilean party came out against the ICC in 1998 and said an attack on Pinochet is an attack on all of us.
we're not going to be swayed by the different types of threats, some of which are public and some maybe are not.
You mentioned, without names, that there are many who have been indicted who are not in democratic states, who are essentially despots. Israel is a democracy. They have a judiciary, they have law enforcement.
This is always my favorite take, because it's like, Israel's a democracy and they've democratically done a genocide. They've decided to do a genocide on democratic boundaries. And it's like, yeah, upon a population that doesn't have a say, which is why it's laughable to say Israel's a fucking democracy. It's an apartheid. You can't have a democracy while trying to maintain a Judeo-supremacist apartheid regime. That's just, it doesn't work that way. You can't do that. You can't have an ethno-state and a democracy at the same time. You can't openly codify ethno-state principles in your fucking constitution and then turn around and be like, oh, well, we're still a democracy. You just can't. This is why this framing is fucking idiotic. Okay? It's not. It's like saying Nazi Germany is a democracy. It's not. It's not a democracy. Rhodesia and South Africa was a democracy, but each disenfranchised the vast group of the population. Exactly.
They have elected leaders. Why do you need to do this when they have a system that could do this?
I'd much rather Israel does it. I mean, Israel, you're right, it has a very good Supreme Court, it has very qualified, brilliant lawyers. But even if you read recent...
I love when people try to own you by bringing up the despots that the U.S. is aligned with. Yeah, exactly. That's the other part.
Information, for example, in the New York Times, I think the Bergman and Mazzelli report. If one goes back to the 80s and look at the Karp report, a Deputy Attorney General of Israel who said that Israel was unwilling and unable to investigate crimes in the occupied territories. If one looks at the Sassoon report, if one looks at General, US three-star general that was in Washington, D.C. Between 2019 and 2021, who said there's no accountability, the simple truth is that for all the application of the law in the territory of Israel, unfortunately, it doesn't appear to be applied with vigor or sincerity in the occupied territories or in Gaza. And this is why we have to move forward. Of course, if Israel disagrees, if they think they are investigating the same individuals and the same conduct and the policies that underpin them, they are free, notwithstanding their objections to jurisdiction, to raise a challenge before the judges of the court. And that's what...
Any day now, guys, 75 years, 76 years now of this shit. But any day they're going to investigate themselves and then what? Find no fucking wrongdoing as they have time and time again.
I would advise them to do. But the simple truth of the matter is the disregard of the law in this situation and the policies and the utterances that are coming from the Prime Minister, the Minister of Defence, support and corroborate the other evidence we have from a variety of sources.
I just want to fill in for our viewers. You mentioned the big New York Times Magazine report this weekend by Ronan Bergman and Mark Mazzetti, an 8-year effort. It was titled Unpunished, and as you say, it is about the failure of the Israeli system, police, legal and military, to punish settlers on the occupied West Bank as they punish Arab Palestinians on the West Bank. Now, you talk about the state of Palestine, and therefore you have jurisdiction over things that happen in the occupied West Bank and Gaza. There are those who disagree with you. Clearly, Israel disagrees. The United States disagrees. They point out that as yet...
Yeah. Well, look at all the bad guys disagreeing with you because you're saying the bad guys are doing bad things. What do you have to say to that?
There is no official state of Palestine recognized by the Security Council. What is your jurisdiction there?
Well, it's a jurisdiction that's detailed in the statute and that has been decided by majority by the pre-trial chamber. Leaving aside to the for the moment the fact that 141 countries have recognized Palestine as a state.
In the General Assembly.
In the General Assembly, 124 states that make up the Assembly of State Parties agreed for Palestine to be accepted as a state party to the Rome Statute. And so, by dint of that, clearly we have jurisdiction. The Geneva Conventions also make it clear that it applies to high contracting parties. Israel is a high contracting party, as is Palestine.
What does that mean?
It means that they have both committed to comply with the provisions of the Geneva Conventions, that includes the prohibition on starvation as a method of war, that includes the prohibition on taking hostages or willfully killing or extermination. I mean, these come from the Rome Statute. But originally they found form in the Geneva Conventions. So we apply the law. There's been judicial pronouncements.
The people complaining that there's no real state of Palestine being the same people who vetoed it continually, also the very same people who keep saying, ironically enough, oh, we want a two-state solution. I am, of course, referencing Joseph Robinette Brandon, who at the Morehouse speech that he delivered talked about how he is a true champion of a two-state solution, despite the fact that his own envoys at the UN vetoed that exact thing. They vetoed Palestinian statehood and then criticized the UN for even going against the wishes of the Security Council. It's fucking ridiculous.
By the ICC, and we have to be guided by those.
The Hamas leaders who you have sought arrest warrants for, do you have any hope that anybody will move against them? Do you have any hope of ever getting to them? Again, the ICC does not have a police force. You cannot go and apprehend. As far as we know, at least 2 of them are underground, potentially in tunnels in Gaza. And Ismail Haniyeh appears to be the leader involved in the political negotiations, indirect, between Israel and Hamas, with the US, Qatar, other nations mediating. How do you expect to go after them? Who do you think is going to hand them over?
Well, the first thing is for judges to rule on the applications. Until the judges rule on the application, all it is an application that doesn't have legal effect. But then states have certain responsibilities and individuals have choices. If individuals say that what's alleged is not made out, it's bunkum, it's nonsense, put your case before the independent judges of the court. This court has had acquittals. This court has not confirmed cases. The record shows that it's a forensic laboratory in which the evidence determines whether or not people are convicted, cases are confirmed, or cases are kicked out. That applies to Hamas leaders if they want, and if not, we have to see what are the other opportunities if they're either in Palestine, which is a state party, or if they're in Qatar, which is a non-state party. But in a way, that's getting ahead of ourselves. Today, the announcement is the application, and the judges have to be given the time to independently and dispassionately assess what we've given. Nothing is a given. They have to assess it and to make a determination whether or not to issue warrants. But I also wanted to underline the fact that you mentioned in an earlier question the allegations of anti-Semitism, the hate, the idea that by applying the law blindly, we are favouring one side or persecuting or being hostile to another side, and nothing can be further from the truth. We have so many people of distinction that are respected, and they independently came in. I brought them in. They sat in the evidence review. This is not a witch hunt. This is not some kind of emotional reaction to noise. We've been criticised for going too slowly, criticised for going too fast. It's a forensic process that is expected of us as international prosecutors, as an independent court, to build evidence that is solid, that will not dissolve in the courtroom. And that's what we've done. Today is the fulfillment of that first stage, this first round of applications in which we say we have done our job. We now give it to the judges to scrutinise. So it's not against any people, and it's not against or for any interest. It's simply because if we don't apply the law equally, we're going to disintegrate as a species. Of course, what's happening in the West Bank is extremely worrying. It's an issue also that we are investigating. But there's a certain, in democracies, political choices tend to be determinative. And all I can say is that Israel, the leaders, the country, has a choice. That they can engage and do what is necessary to meet complementarity in the United Kingdom. In the Iraq investigations before I was appointed prosecutor, it was found that there were deficiencies in the legal system for military justice. But we have really sincerely looked at things with a broad horizon.
Typical Muslim. He's Muslim, so ICC warrant isn't a real thing. I'm trolling. Yeah, his name is Crescent Moon and Star Chatters. Which, by the way, is ironic because, like, that is literally what that flavor of defense is ongoing currently.
Looking at incriminating and exonerating evidence equally, looking at evidence, authenticating the evidence, and realizing that we're not worth the job, the title as being a prosecutor or being lawyers or having an international criminal court. if we are dissuaded because of extraneous interests from moving forward. Because at the end of the day, I go back to this basic premise. A child in Myanmar that's persecuted, or a child in Israel that is an orphan or that has been taken and killed, or one in Ukraine, for their family, there's no difference. Their universe has been torn to shreds. And this is the need for the court and independent judges to scrutinise, not look at the politics, not look at a dysfunctional Security Council, not look at the difficulties it may cause, regional organisations or different groupings, but simply say, is the evidence reliable? And if so, we go back to King John, that the king is under no man but God and the law. We all must be subject to that. Otherwise, what is this international rules-based system? What is the principles of public international law that so many men and women have given their lives for since the Second World War, particularly? And I think it's a dishonour for them. It's a dishonour for the victims of the gas chambers if we airbrush out inconvenient truths. And we have to try our best to achieve justice for the victims of the 7th of October. We also must try our best to do justice for so many innocent people that are suffering as we speak in Israel and also in Gaza, as well as in other parts of Palestine.
Prosecutor Karim Khan, thank you very much indeed for joining us.
Thank you so much.
I mean, he fucking banged on that. What? He's considered... Where is it? He's considered an Ahmadiyya Muslim. He's an Ahmadiyya Muslim considered by a lot of Muslim extremists as pagans. They get a lot of strife. I'm calling into question his Muslim bona fides. Karim Khan is not a HasanAbi head. I need you guys to understand something, okay? I do not consider this person to be like a guy who is like dedicated his life to fucking social justice or anything like that, okay? However, in this particular scenario, it does seem to me like he's doing something that is previously unimaginable. Dude, so much of this stuff since October 7, if you were to tell me fucking 10 years ago would happen in the future, I'd look at you like you're the most insane person I've ever heard. Like, if someone were to tell me that in the future there will come a day where I will see the International Court, the ICJ or the ICC prosecute like Israeli war crimes, I'd be like, get the fuck out of here, dude. You're on crack. That there would be tens of thousands of people in the fucking streets protesting for Palestinian emancipation. It's just like unheard of. It's unimaginable. I'm sure the Palestinians in this chat will also will also explain to you that this all of this shit is just like so fucking new. So yeah, I'm gonna be honest with you. It's pretty fucking it's pretty crazy to think of. Like, it's hard for me not to maintain optimism in this circumstance for this reason. It's just like not a thing that I've ever seen. I've never seen any kind of like any kind of action in this direction. $16.9 ounces. Damn, it's a whole pound, baby. Pound of chicken.
Today, I'm filing applications for warrants of arrest before Pretrial Chamber 1 of the International Criminal Court in the situation in the state of Palestine. These applications are the outcome of independent investigations conducted by my office under the direction of the two principal trial lawyers standing behind me today, Brenda J. Hollis, who, in addition to leading our work in the situation in Ukraine,
More like Brenda J. Hamas. Fucking got him.
for the past couple of years, has since January also taken over leadership of the Palestine investigation. And Andrew Cayley, King's Counsel, who more recently joined the office and will be leading our work on the situation in the state of Palestine going forward.
This is just the full scope. We're skipping this. This part is great. The State Department spokesperson warns ICC will arrest warrants will jeopardize ceasefire negotiations, which is a threat, by the way. That's all that is. But before we do that, here is my goat, Moin Rabbani, on Democracy Now!, which is also my other goat. Talking about the ICC announcement.
Can you talk about the significance of these?
Perhaps you guys will appreciate his commentary a little bit more than mine. If you think that I'm partial, if you think that I'm biased, if you think that I'm not knowledgeable about the significance of this decision, let's hear from Rabbani, who I would say is like, I would go so far as to say he's like even more pessimistic than I am usually.
Charges, if the ICC court decides to bring them.
I think they're very significant because it places Israel's leaders of this genocidal onslaught on the Gaza Strip in the dock. And of course, prosecutor Karim Khan is also seeking the arrest of 3 Hamas leaders. I think there's also a lot that can be said about this. For Karim Khan, once again, history begins on October 7th. Even though his investigation has, by his own account, been ongoing for a number of years and is supposed to take into account all crimes committed since 2014, he has yet to address any crimes between 2014 and 2023, notably the crime of apartheid, the crime of illegal settlements in occupied territories, Israel's, and for that matter, Hamas's conduct in the 2014 war and in 2021. And the other thing that struck me is Khan's attempt to, let's say, place the onus primarily on Hamas. So he's indicted 3 Hamas leaders and 2 Israeli leaders. And what struck me is that he is seeking the arrest of Hamas's titular leader, Ismail Haniyeh, who, according to most accounts, was not involved in the planning and execution of the Hamas attacks of October 7th. Presumably, there's some element of command responsibility involved, but he has not sought the arrest of either Israel's president, Isaac Herzog, or the Israeli chief of staff, or any of the commanding officers involved in Israel's onslaught since October 7th, nor, for that matter, other key decision makers in Israel's war cabinet, like Benny Gantz, like Gadi Eisenkot, and others.
So can you talk about what this practically means, Moin Rabbani?
Well, I think it will have more impact on, assuming again that the arrest warrants are indeed issued, it will have more effect on Israel, I think, than on Hamas. I mean, when is the last time you saw Hamas leaders going on a shopping trip in Paris or London? It's Israeli leaders who will need to travel to Europe and elsewhere where they would face the prospect of arrest. And I think this also puts other countries in the dock. Will they now have to make a choice between Israeli impunity and their obligations under the Rome Statute, at least those who are members of the International Criminal Court. And again, I think in broader political terms, this is of massive significance, despite all the shortcomings that I've just been discussing.
Yeah.
This means that Israel's leaders are indicted war criminals. And we heard the clip of Netanyahu once again trying to hide behind the Holocaust and what he claims is Israeli democracy and so on. That's no longer going to fly. That edifice has been peeled away. Israel will now be seen and judged on the basis of its actions in real time rather than on history in Europe.
What does this mean for the United States, for the U.S. main ally, Israel, its ally indicted on war crimes?
Well, I think that's another key issue. The U.S., of course, rejects the International Criminal Court and rejects its jurisdiction over this issue. But I think there's another key point here, which is all the threats that are being made by the United States, particularly most recently by a group of Republican senators, threatening all kinds of reprisals and retaliations against the International Criminal Court if it were to proceed with this measure. And this is a crime in and of itself. So it will be very interesting to see if the U.S. follows through on those threats, and if it does, how the prosecutor of the International Criminal Court will react. If I can just make one additional point, the reason we've gotten to this, to where we are today, is actually because of Hamas. About a decade ago, the Palestinian president, Mahmoud Abbas, was coming under increasing Palestinian criticism and condemnation for dragging his feet on the Palestinian application to ratify the Rome Statute and become part of the International Criminal Court. He said he would only do so if he had the explicit endorsement to do so of the Hamas leadership. And it was only after he obtained that Palestine sought to become a state party to the International Criminal Court. So here you have a situation where it is the Palestinians who have been calling for an investigation of all crimes committed in what's called the situation of Palestine, whether by themselves or anyone else, and Israel and the United States categorically rejecting the court's jurisdiction and any measures that it may take.
Now, Israel and the United States are not signatories to the ICC, but
Correct.
I'm just looking at this New York Times article from last July. President Biden has quietly ordered the U.S. government to begin sharing evidence of Russian war crimes in Ukraine with the International Criminal Court in The Hague, according to officials familiar with the matter, signaling a major shift in American policy. And, of course, Russia also wasn't a signatory, and Putin was indicted. Talk about that kind of cooperation with the ICC in that case, but certainly not in this case.
Well, that's called the rules-based international order, where you apply international law and the jurisdiction of the International Criminal Court and so on to your enemies and adversaries, but you reject them for yourself and your allies, because there the rule is total impunity and to do as you please. And I should say that Karim Khan himself played a rather nefarious role in this. Upon assuming his position of prosecutor, he briefed the Security Council and informed the Security Council that he would only pursue those cases referred to him by the Council. And that was a clear signal that he was no longer going to pursue the cases in Afghanistan and Palestine. He did so before Russia invaded Ukraine. Once Russia did invade Ukraine, that principle went out the window, and he basically did the bidding of those who had supported his campaign to become prosecutor. And I think it's also in that broader context that his continued ability to slowfoot and marginalize and ignore the situation in Palestine, particularly in the context of the current genocide, became untenable.
And can you finally tell us who Yahya Sinwar, Ismail Haniyeh, who lives right in Doha, in Qatar, and Mohammed Deif are?
Well, I should add that Qatar is also not a signatory to the Rome Statute, and so therefore this should in principle not lead to Haniyeh's extradition to The Hague. Ismail Haniyeh is the head of the Politburo of Hamas and therefore the titular leader of the organization. Yahya Sinwar is the leader of Hamas within the Gaza Strip, and at the same time is seen as the most powerful leader within the movement as a whole. And Mohammed Deif is the head of the Martyr Azzeddin al-Qassam brigades, the military wing of Hamas. And Sinwar and Deif specifically are also seen as the main architects of the October 7th attacks in southern Israel and Hamas's military strategy in the months since.
Well, Muin,
Yes, it says USSR and on a banner. It's so sickening. The State Department spokespeople say shit about the hostage negotiations. Bro, today Bibi rejected the hostage negotiators' request in the war cabinet to expand their mandate and salvage the talks for a deal. He literally laughed at them. He laughed. According to Channel 11, a minister in the war cabinet said that after today, the conclusion that Netanyahu doesn't want a deal has become clear, as if it wasn't fucking obvious until now. Yep. Now, Al Davis survived 7 Israeli assassinations. Yeah, his family has not, however. So let's take a look at some of these wonderful developments. What next? The judges at the International Criminal Court will most likely approve the prosecutor's request for arrest warrants against Netanyahu and Gallant. Exercises such as Knesset members signing a petition against the court, rapprochement, and cries of hypocrisy are good for Netanyahu's internal politics, but will not help Israel. The impact of such a move on the part of the International Criminal Court could be much wider and affect the continuation of the war, especially when another legal body, the International Court of Justice, is about to rule on South Africa's demand for an immediate ceasefire in the Gaza Strip. From there until another vote by the UN Security Council on a resolution calling for a ceasefire is short road. President Biden will have a very difficult time vetoing such a resolution in the current state of affairs. Good stuff overall. But what is the United States doing in this situation? Well, they're saying that the ICC is actually fucking up the ceasefire negotiations, once again, weaponizing the current hostages that are stuck in Gaza, even though they don't give a fuck about the hostages or their living conditions, and never have, because our weapons have been fucking killing them. Giving Israel all the political cover it needs to continue its ethnic cleansing campaign is directly against that principle, the idea that, like, we want a ceasefire and then a retrieval of the hostages. Biden now says, we reject the prosecutor's request of the Hague Tribunal for indictments against Israeli leaders. There is no room for comparison between Israel and Hamas. Contrary to what they try to claim against Israel at the International Court of Justice, what is happening in Gaza is not genocide. Biden's latest statements. He's at an event at the White House on the occasion of Jewish American Heritage Month. We stand by Israel in an effort to eliminate Yahya Sinwar and the other butchers from Hamas. That's what Brandon just said, just now, literally. China, save us. Please, China, save us.
Hello, everyone. Good to be back after some time on the road. I'm going to start with some comments on the announcement from the prosecutor at the ICC today. As the Secretary said in a statement a short time ago, the United States fundamentally rejects the announcement today from the prosecutor of the International Criminal Court that he is applying for arrest warrants for senior Israeli officials together with warrants for Hamas terrorists. There should be no equivalence between Israel and Hamas. None. Hamas is a brutal terrorist organization that carried out the worst massacre of Jews since the Holocaust and is still holding dozens of innocent people hostage.
Boom. You're right. There can't be an equivalence between Israel and Hamas. Israel has done much worse shit than Hamas. So I guess technically they're right. This isn't to say that Hamas hasn't done horrible shit. It's just that Israel's done way worse shit.
Including Americans. Furthermore, the United States has been clear since well before the current conflict that the ICC has no jurisdiction over this matter. The ICC was established by its state parties as a court of limited jurisdiction. These limits are rooted in principles of complementarity, which do not appear to have been applied here, amid the prosecutor's rush to seek these arrest warrants, rather than allowing the Israeli legal system a full and timely opportunity to proceed.
Yeah.
In other situations,
We're just not letting Israel deal with it on its own, dude. They're a democracy. Why won't we let the Israeli courts take this up? Yeah, dude, we just conducted a report on whether Israel was violating international human rights with our weapons. And in that bullshit investigation, we said Israel might be violating international human rights, but we need to give them time to figure it out on their own first. It's always just we need time. Right now, time is of the essence. Okay? There ain't no time. There's no time left. Israel is still doing the fucking genocide. The fuck do you mean? Give him time, dude. Give it time. Let him cook. They're going to find themselves in violation, I promise.
The prosecutor deferred to national investigations and worked with states to allow them time to investigate. The prosecutor did not afford the same opportunity to Israel in this case, which has ongoing investigations into allegations against its personnel. There are also deeply troubling process questions. Despite not being a member of the court, Israel was prepared to cooperate with the prosecutor and had made that clear. In fact, the prosecutor himself was scheduled to visit Israel as early as next week to discuss the investigation and hear from the Israeli government.
This is the part that is really funny, because in many ways, as Maureen Rabbani correctly pointed out, this is kind of analogous to the World Central Kitchen situation with Jose Andres. Israel is going so above and beyond in its unconscionable acts of very obvious war crimes and violence upon a civilian population, which is collective punishment, which is a clear definitional war crime, not allowed, that it is losing people that otherwise were aligned with Israel, including the fucking guy that they put in to the prosecutorial position to begin with. Now, I don't know how genuine he is, but the actions that he has taken thus far is pretty significant.
To land in Israel today to coordinate the visit. Israeli government was scheduled to visit Israel as early as next week to discuss the investigation and hear from the Israeli government. The prosecutor's staff was supposed to land in Israel today to coordinate the visit, and instead, Israel was informed that the prosecutor's staff didn't get on their flight around the same time that the prosecutor himself went on television to announce these charges. These circumstances call into question the legitimacy and credibility of this investigation. Finally,
yeah, maybe they didn't want to get fucking assassinated, big dog. Because, like, ultimately, what could you do? What would we do? If Israel was like, yeah, sorry, they just kind of died. It's a war zone. What, is America going to say, wow, that's a bridge too far? Like, really? Think about it. What would happen? Let's say they go to Israel. Israel just fucking marks them in a hypothetical scenario. Not saying that they're going to. Is pure hypothetical is simply to see what, like, America's actions will be. What happened after World Central Kitchen workers were assassinated? Nothing. It led the news for a week. Nothing. It doesn't matter. There's nothing Israel can't do that America won't defend at this point. At least that's what they are trying to show the rest of the world, which is really fucked up. Obviously really fucked up for moral reasons, but even if you don't give a fuck about the morality of the situation, it's really fucked up for practical reasons. Wasn't World Central Kitchen an accident? Yeah, dude. Totally. That's why they triple tapped it as an accident. What do you mean?
This decision does nothing to help and could jeopardize ongoing efforts to reach a ceasefire agreement that would get hostages out of Gaza and surge humanitarian assistance in. Those are the goals that the United States is pursuing and will continue to pursue despite these actions by the ICC prosecutor. And with that, Matt.
That's it? Nothing else?
That's it.
Okay. All right. Well, let's start with that since you started with that. Just very briefly, you said that the actions, the announcement on television and cancellation of the flights of the staff call into question the legitimacy and credibility of the investigation. Do they call those into question for the entire court?
We are just referring to the actions the prosecutor has taken today. The entire court hasn't acted. The prosecutor has taken this initial action. We're going to see what the next step is. But certainly it calls into question the investigation that he has conducted and the action he has taken when you see him short circuit a process that was underway to gather facts, which is what you expect any prosecutor, any investigator to do when they're considering.
Bro, the entitlement is so funny. This is literally Trump shit. You know how like Trump complains that the judge will issue a gag order or whatever? Or the judge will be like, you have to be in court. This is a criminal trial. And he'll be like, you're violating my laws. You should let me do whatever I want and say whatever I want. And it's like, we're doing that entitlement for a whole other nation. It's like, what are you fucking saying? Like, what? I can't believe the prosecutor wouldn't play nice with Israel and like fly into Israel. It's clear that they have enough evidence. Why the fuck would the prosecutor not conduct a fact-finding mission before coming up with this application? They would only do that if they were, you know, directly trying to melt the case for Israel, only offering them additional legal cover, which is conspiratorial, and I really don't want to think about it like that, and I really don't want to assume that that's going on.
Jurisdiction for a second. Who does have jurisdiction here?
So the government of Israel has jurisdiction
over the occupied territory. We have jurisdiction over Gaza, which is not entirely occupied.
They have jurisdiction into looking at the actions by their military personnel.
Palestinians, if they have a complaint, they have to bring it to Israeli courts.
We have jurisdiction, and we
have
with the use of our equipment.
I'm sorry. How do you have jurisdiction?
With the use of our military equipment
Matt,
that we have provided.
How do you have jurisdiction?
If you look at the Leahy law, if you look at
that's not jurisdiction in a criminal process. That's
not in a criminal process, but it has to do with the determinations that we make and the policies that flow from it.
Not jurisdiction.
But Matt, long term, you were right that we want to see.
You used to work for DOJ, Matt. You were on. U.S. does not have jurisdiction.
There are different. I wasn't referring to criminal jurisdiction, Matt. There are different ways to look at this. Long term, we agree with you that the Palestinian people should be a state that has and have the ability to make these determinations. But that's not where we are today. That's where we're trying to get to.
You were fine with the ICC going after.
Go ahead, Humera.
Oh, so I guess we don't have jurisdiction. Never mind. You're streaming murder, Hasan. See you after the ban. Yeah. Who has jurisdiction? Israel. So if Palestinians have complaints, they'll just have to go to Israeli courts. We have jurisdiction. I'm sorry. How do you have jurisdiction? It is pretty funny because, like, there doesn't need to be any serious defense against these kinds of actions. Important to mention that Israeli officials think the ICJ will rule for a ceasefire in Rafah as early as this week and increasingly worried that the U.S. won't veto it in the Security Council, according to Con 11. I mean, that'd be great. That'd be great. After the ICC prosecutor decision, Israeli officials are expected to hold tomorrow a meeting to discuss steps against the Palestinian Authority. Israel has one fucking speed, bro.
So back on the question, jurisdiction with the international criminal, you said that.
Oh, here we go. Let's hear what our boy had to say. He was trying to say that we have jurisdiction over Israel's actions due to the Leahy law, as in, like, we have a way to stop them from doing certain things because we'll just stop our flow of weapons, which, albeit true, is still ridiculous to fucking maintain while you're simultaneously running defense for an additional legal structure to also enforce when you yourself are personally not invested in enforcing any sort of restraint or restriction on Israel's actions. So, in a way, America has abdicated its duty, and that's precisely the reason why the ICC is stepping in. If you hate Israel so much, why don't you fund Hamas? It's because I'm a hypocrite and only fund myself at the top of the hour. That's all I care about. As a secret capitalist, instead of funding Hamas, I fund my own pockets at the top of the hour by telling you, if you no longer want to see the 3-minute ad break that's coming for you, all you need to do is subscribe for $5 or for free with the Twitch Prime. You're not even a secret capitalist? Yeah, no. I'm an open capitalist. I love capitalism. That's my favorite. I mean, that was obviously bait, but like, that's my favorite criticism because it's like, okay, I'm a capitalist. What changed about anything that I've said? You know what I mean? Okay, now tackle the argument. I love capitalism. I'm a capitalist. Let's discuss. You know what I mean? Like, people just are so stuck on that point, like so stuck on a hyper specific understanding, a false understanding, mind you, of like what it means to be anti-capitalist, that they just never ever want to have the actual conversation. And it's like, yeah, sure, I love capitalism. You got me. I was living a lie all along. So what do you have to say about the way that our current economy is organized, though? This is the obvious limitation with hypocrisy baiting.
Because the Palestinians are not a state actor, they don't have jurisdiction over their side. But back in 2014, I just Googled this one up. Jen Psaki was up here, your colleague. The statement was, today the ICC convicted Jermaine Katanga, the commander of the FRPI militia, for his responsibility for war crimes and crimes against humanity. The ICC's DRC cases represent a significant step toward delivering justice for victims in the DRC. She then went on to say the United States reiterates its call for the apprehension of Sylvester Mudakumora, another leader of an abusive rebel militia in the DRC, who is subject to an arrest warrant by the ICC. The Department of State continues to offer a reward of up to $5 million for information leading to his arrest. So, at least in 2014, it was the position of the administration that you could even put out a reward for the arrest of somebody that would then go to the ICC and would have jurisdiction. So why does it not that apply to the current context?
So we have supported the work of the ICC in previous cases. I can't speak to this case.
Because they're black, Ryan. Because they're in Africa. That's it. I mean, that's the real answer. The real answer is like they are not inside of the neat little confines of American allegiance. They are not in the imperial core. The number is insane, by the way. What is it? Like 47 out of 48 at the ICC is African. 47 of the prosecutions that have been conducted successfully have been conducted against African like dictators and despots and shit. With the 48th being Vladimir Putin. That's insane, man. It was 47 out of 47. The Yugoslav prosecution was a separate, specially constituted court before the ICC was founded. No, Milosevic doesn't count because it predates it. I think. Right? It's still technically ICC. Anyway, the point is, and this is important to recognize, it's not just because they're black. It's just that black nations and black despots seemingly are always outside of our realm of interest. And that's it. It's just because they are not in the neat little protective bubble of American State Department interest. That's why we're talking about Putin as well. It's not just that they are, black or that they are in Africa. I'm saying that as a joke for the most part. But as long as you are outside of the America's sphere of influence, if you're not in the imperial core, you might have even collaborated at a certain point with American interests. You might have aligned with American interests. You might have collaborated with Americans and became a fascist dictator. Make no mistake, by the way, I'm not saying that the ICC prosecutions are wrong. I'm not saying that at all. That these guys don't deserve it or anything like that. That's not what I'm saying. My point is, as it stands, up until recently, these international organs of justice, alongside the UN, have only worked to correspond to America's understanding of the international rule-based order, where America makes the rules and America gives the orders. That's it. This is why, and I might be wrong on this, by the way, the previous fact. I'm like, we have obviously collaborated with despots and whatnot, tyrants all around the world, that then we burn because they are of no use to us any longer, and then they get prosecuted. That's one thing. But never, as far as I understand, never have I ever seen you like sucking duck and taking it up the ass. You should go help the people in the Middle East to see how they treat you, Lamau. I find it really funny for a dude who is pro-Israel to come out and say something so stupid, not realizing that I grew up in the MENA region for a longer period of my life than I lived in the United States of America. Like, what the fuck do you mean? $2015 account, there's a whole ass adult. A whole ass adult is getting close to getting equal. It's true. A whole ass adult with a incredibly stunted brain. I saw a Redditor say your dad is the Turkish Elon Musk. Yeah, dude. That's why I'm giving him money. Because he's the Turkish Elon Musk. That's how rich I am. I'm richer than Elon Musk. Whoa, dude, no dirty laundry on the stream. Wait, what? I'm his... The fuck do you mean? I'm his son. It is my duty and my great honor to be able to take care of my family. What the fuck are you talking about? dirty laundry. Only Americans would consider that to be like inappropriate or whatever. You were in Ankara, easy with the MENA. Oh my God, Turk's getting mad that Turkey is still functionally a part of the Middle East. Yeah bro, no, I'm not saying. Senin baban Sabancı diyenler vardı bir ara. Beyt sallayan mallar, inanan var mı gerçekten? I don't think bilmiyorlar ki bunlar Sabancı'nın kim olduğunu. Sabancı için çalıştı babam, doğru, o açıdan orada yalan yok. Ama bu salaklar Sabancı'nın kim olduğunu bilmiyorlar ki. Birincisi Sabancı'nın oğlu olsam herhalde genetik olarak biraz daha farklı bir görünürdüm. Konuşamıyorum.
Because I don't know the fundamentals of it. I don't know the jurisdictional questions. Ultimately, the main way that the ICC has jurisdiction is if one of the two state parties to a case is a signatory to the Rome Statute and comes in under the ICC's jurisdiction. That is not the case here. You have Israel, who of course is not a signatory to the ICC, the Palestinians, who do not represent a state at this time, and so in our view cannot sign the Rome Statute and come under the ICC's jurisdiction.
Yeah, who's been who has had a really antagonistic way of dealing with the Palestinian statehood question? Who voted against their statehood?
Jurisdiction. I can't speak to other cases. I'd have to look into it in more detail.
And one quick follow-up to what Saeed had asked about whether or not the U.S. had approved the deal that Hamas said it agreed to. There's a lot of reporting in the region that CIA Director Burns was involved in that, had approved that. Are you saying that is that not the case? What was Burns' involvement there?
So I'm not going to speak to any of the reporting because I know I will just say, because there has been reporting all over the map on this question. Some of it right, some of it partially right, some of it completely wrong. I will say that the reporting that Hamas had accepted a proposal that we put on the table was not accurate. They had sent back a response that accepted some of it, but offered amendments. Some of those amendments are significant in nature, and they claimed at the time they had accepted the response. That's not what, or they accepted the proposal. That's not what had actually happened.
It's pretty funny that they have to sit there and like lie about their own proposal that their own CIA fucking put forward now that Israel chose to destroy it. They vetoed the Palestinian state, and now they say they can't sign the Rome Statute as defense against war crimes committed by Israel within that territory. The most profane sophistry and an insult to all humanity, fucking criminal, especially when considering the fact that just because a population is stateless doesn't fucking change the reality that you can't do unimaginable wrong to them. Also, here's another country that is not a part of the fucking Rome Statute or under ICC jurisdiction that the United States of America, also not a part of the ICC jurisdiction, was collaborating with the ICC on. Russia. That's right. The United States was sending evidence to the ICC to further prosecute Vladimir Putin and the Russian government for its fucking war crimes, which I don't have an issue with, by the way, in doing that kind of thing, even though it is obviously deeply hypocritical. Ultimately, it's for a good cause. But where the fuck was that energy then? The idea that like, oh, we deny jurisdiction over over a stateless population that's being wronged, conducted by a state that hasn't signed on to the ICC, that is our ally, is ridiculous. It's like, can you imagine a world in which we had the rule-based international order that was like mostly designed after World War II, mind you, pre-World War II, and we were, instead of the business plot succeeded, and instead of actually fucking joining the Allied forces, we're a part of the Axis at this point, and America is literally being like, Germany's a democracy. They are democratically making these decisions. It's the most moral army. They're looking for living space. They're perfectly well within their own court structure to engage in whatever kind of partition they have for Poland, whatever kind of like Eastern European conquest that they're engaging in. It's not actually conquest. They're perfectly well within their own boundaries. They're prosecuting criminals. I thought that was fucking perfectly legal, by the way. It's a democracy. Yeah, for the crime of what? Oh, for the crime of being trade unionist, socialist, Jew, gay, trans, but crimes nonetheless. It's perfectly done within the confines of a democratic a democratic structure. They have their own court system. They will prosecute themselves and maybe find no wrongdoing. You know? Yeah, the Wehrmacht is the most moral army in the world. Germany is the best, if not the only democracy in the world. It's completely ridiculous.